In this video, we're going to demonstrate how to replace the Human Touch Super Novo hip air valve bank. The first thing we're going to do is have the chair slide forward just to give us some more room to work. So to do that, we'll just use the remote control back buttons. If we just select to recline the chair automatically moves forward before it reclines. And once it reaches its forwardmost position, we can power off the remote. Like so. The next thing we'll do is power off the chair, then unplug it. Next, we'll use a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the 4 screws that secure the rear shroud. Next, we'll slide the shroud backward and then just rotate it clockwise and rest it behind the chair. We don't need to completely detach. We just need access to the PCB box. Next, we'll use a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the 2 screws that secure the PCB box cover. And then we can remove that cover. But before we can remove it all the way, there's a small connector in the front left that we need to disconnect. And you may need to pull up real firmly on the back. There's sort of secured by a tab back there, so pull up on one side and then pull up on the other and it'll pop off like you just heard there. Next, we need to use a very short Phillips head screwdriver to remove the 4 screws from the top of the hip air valve bank. Okay, next we're going to tip that air valve bank to the right to expose the 3 hoses. And we're going to need some tape and a marker to number these hoses because we need to put them back in the same spot. So number them 1, 2, 3 starting from the front, and then you can disconnect the hoses. Next, we're going to turn the air valve bank over to access the 2 connectors. And note that as you're looking at it this way, the yellow connector is on the right. And then disconnect the 2 connectors. Okay, the new air valve bank, we want to look like this. So if your spare part happens to come with a harness attached, just disconnect the harness. To install the new air valve bank, we will first place it into position with the white fittings facing upward so that we can reconnect the hoses. Using the numbering that you marked earlier, reattach the 3 hoses. Make sure each hose is all the way onto the fitting as far as it will go. And make sure that rear hose there is going directly into the other fitting. You can see it just goes a short way there. Okay, now we will turn the air valve bank over to the other side and reconnect those two connectors. Again, remember, with this view here, the yellow is on the right. Okay, then we can place the valve into its final position and replace the screws to secure it. Now we're ready to reinstall the PCB cover. Note the two slots on the back of the cover. We need to install those over the two corresponding tabs on the chair. You can use your fingers to guide those into position. Before we can replace the two front screws, however, we need to reconnect this small connector. Then we can replace the two screws. And we're ready to reinstall the rear shroud. So we can turn that around and slide that into position on the inside of the plastic chair side panels. Okay, and we can make sure the screw holes are aligned and then replace the 4 screws to secure it. To make sure the shroud is installed properly, we need to push down on it and make sure it bounces up and down like that. This bouncing is necessary for the safety sensor to work. If it doesn't bounce at all, then most likely the screws aren't threaded properly, so you might remove them and reinstall them. Okay, then we're ready to plug in the chair and power it on. To confirm that the hip air valve bank is working, we can power on the remote. Select the Cloud Touch program and navigate over to the hip selection and make sure the hip air valve bags are working. And if all looks good, then we're done.